Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, things in South Africa are just, the temperature's boiling. You know, it's getting really, really bad. And this ANC government, they are just so, it's like Marie Antoinette, who said to the French peasants, if they don't have bread, let them eat cake. That's how out of touch she was with the general population. And if you look at Cyril Ramaphosa and his cohorts, they are so out of touch with what's going on in South Africa. They haven't got a friggin' clue. That's how simple it is. Now, what are we talking about here? We're talking about this lockdown. And we're talking about how it's actually creating a huge issue with the lack of food security. People are starving all over South Africa. I'm not talking thousands of people, I'm talking millions of people in South Africa. This is what's been happening in Zimbabwe now for a while. It's now come like a plague into South Africa. And you got 27 deaths through COVID, and a lot of people are facing starvation in South Africa because of the lockdown. It is, you know, the L factor is completely gone. You know, it's not even missing in action. It's been blown out of the sky. It typifies how stupid this ANC government is. Let me tell you what's happening in Timothy Valley, and I covered this just a few days ago about that store that was actually broken into and looted because people were starving there. On Wednesday, the 15th of April, Russell Viljoen and senior members of his church had to smuggle food into Timothy Valley in Port Elizabeth as they feared being robbed by an increasingly hungry community. Get that? Increasingly hungry community. Now, when people get really hungry and they're starving, they get desperate and they commit crimes. I mean, that's logic. So if you're living in Port Elizabeth, just know that this is on your doorstep. Anyway, he said, people are hungry. There never was a lot of food here, but now there is nothing. People are beyond desperate. We have been counting. Firstly, those on weekly wages got nothing. Then those on fortnightly pay got nothing. Now those on monthly pay will also get nothing. Well done, Ramaphosa, and your lockdown. You are a sheer act of genius. And I'm not saying that as a compliment. I'm being very, very, how can I put it? I just totally disrespect you. You're a complete asshole. And talking about arsehole, hippo-wise, Cyril Ramaphosa, you should go and pog my horn. Look it up. Anyway, let's continue. Over the past 2 days, residents of Timothy Valley have violently looted spaza shops in the area. Now all the shops are closed. They have nothing to sell. These shopkeepers were good to the community. Nobody had to travel to a store. Many were allowed to buy on the book until they got money, Viljoen said. Now, what they're doing is they're destroying their own support infrastructure when it comes to food and essentials. And the ANC government are sitting there on their laurels in their little ivory towers, not realizing that the whole situation in South Africa is imploding under them. Anarchy is coming. There's no question about that. And this is when the adults in the room need to stand up, work together, and get a plan going, because there's definitely a need for a separation of states. Let these ANC infidels go and screw up themselves and their supporters, but let the other adults in the room set up an area where they can be safe and build a real nation. Anyway, Viljoen said, I have to close the church because if people knew that there is even a little bit of food there, they will rob the place. All the big shops, prices have gone up so much. All I can now say to people is, if they have some rice, a few tins of bread, share it with your neighbor. You can't walk openly with food on these streets anymore. Viljoen is no stranger to the extreme violence that often marks life in Port Elizabeth's northern areas. When others refused to bury the gangsters killed in escalating violence in his area, he agreed to lead the funerals. At funeral after funeral, he preached the power of forgiveness. But now he preaches leadership, which is completely lacking in Nelson Mandela Bay, at a local level and at every other level with the ANC. Absolutely disgusting. But now he preaches leadership. As the streets so familiar to him are haunted by hunger, he calls on the church to take a stand. This is a leadership crisis, he says. Amid widespread desperation over a shortage of food parcels promised by the government. Promised by the government. That's called the ANC. You know, those charlatans who are so corrupt, you can't believe anything they say. Anyway, let's get back to this. Amid widespread desperation over a shortage of food, parcels promised by the government, price hikes and escalating hunger, the looting of shops and schools in Nelson Mandela Bay started on Tuesday. Brigadier Thembinkosi Kanana said the police had arrested 9 suspects on charges of business robberies, housebreaking and theft. Now, that's where it's going, guys. You got to understand that when people have looted all the shops and there's no more food in the areas with shops, the next thing they do is they have little missions where they get on WhatsApp and a group of them will go and start attacking a suburb, a middle-class suburb in Port Elizabeth. And look, it's not rocket science. They need food. And they know the only place there's going to be food, because they've destroyed all the shops in the area, is going to be in these middle-class communities where people still have supplies of food. So that's the next target on the list. It's, as I say, it's not rocket science. It's just common sense. Brigadier Thembinkosi Kanana said the police had arrested 9 suspects on charges of business robberies, housebreaking and theft. They were also charged with violating the lockdown regulations. Well, how do you keep them under the lockdown regulations when they're starving and the government is doing nothing to provide food to them? This is a complete fail by the ANC government. And it's only going to get worse as the lockdown continues, because food doesn't grow from the air. You've got to actually produce it, which is where the farmers come in. And of course the farmers have been targeted by this ANC government with expropriation without compensation. They're starting to slow down in production because they don't know if they're going to be there in a couple of years. That this whole thing is a tragedy. It's a Greek tragedy in the making. And it is a catastrophe, because the ANC government are just clueless. Kanana said, due to high visibility of law enforcement in the area, no further looting took place. Many of the looting incidents took place simultaneously, and the reaction of the police and other law enforcement agencies was swift. Due to the volatility of the situation, the public order police fired tear gas, stun grenades, and rubber bullets to disperse the crowd. On Wednesday, the Eastern Cape Department of Social Development was preparing a memorandum to Treasury to ask for more money for food relief in the province, as the provincial government admitted it was unable to cover all the households in the province living below the breadline. The Eastern Cape has the highest rate of unemployment in South Africa. Now, there's the kicker. Food security. We've been talking about it for well over a year here on this channel. Totally undermined by this ANC government, just to win votes for their political party and protect the black privileged who are doing very well, thank you. In a document, the head of the department, Ntombi Bart, said 1.2 million households in the province have incomes below the minimal level. And of these, 264,312 have no income whatsoever. She said the department had no money allocated for disaster relief, but they have 5.2 million rand to help families experiencing undue hardship, and will procure another 3,852 food parcels with this money at 1,359 rand and 18 cents per food parcel. Now, in Plettenberg Bay last week, the community got together and they produced basically the same number of food parcels without any help from the government. This government, if anything, it is just a destructive force in South Africa. It is absolutely ridiculous. Bart said, the department is busy developing a proposal for submission to the provincial treasury, as a current budget allocation for social relief services is by far very insufficient to cover the number of households in the Eastern Cape who live below the minimum living level. Spokesperson for SASSA, Pasika Letsatsi, said the equitable share for social relief of distress for the 2020-2021 financial year allocated to the Eastern Cape is 45 million rand. She went on to say, there is no special allocated budget to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. The allocation for the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is 5.9 million rand. With the above allocation, Nelson Mandela Bay Metro can only procure 4,341 food parcels. This translates to 72 food parcels per ward, taking into account the 60 wards within the metro. Now, here raises another issue. Back in Gauteng area, it's been discovered that the ANC, who control the distribution of food up there, these are food parcels, have only issued those food parcels to regions within communities that support the ANC. 5 communities have been totally left out of getting food parcels in the area that we're talking about. This is going to be a big story. We'll talk about it more in the future. 5 regions have been left out because they did not vote for the ANC. We're not talking about black people, white people rather, we're talking about the black community. This is a political issue. The ANC are politicizing everything after they've gone through the racist side, which we've discussed. They're a pariah. They're not a government. Anyway, let's continue. Provincially, the SA Social Security Agency, or SASSA, will procure 33,390 food parcels with its allocated budget for the current financial year, which is just a drop in the ocean. The Democratic Alliance's spokesperson on social development in the province, Edmund van Vuuren, said the SASSA funding was barely enough to supply 12% of the 264,312 households in the province, whom the department says have zero income, with a food parcel that will last less than a month. He said other districts in the province were only receiving between 30 and 60 food parcels per ward. Van Vuuren welcomed the move by social development to ask the provincial treasury for more money. He said families' circumstances had been aggravated by the lockdown, which has removed some possibility of part-time and contract work, which is often the sole source of income for these families. He said, with thousands of jobs on the line, what will happen when the first round of food parcels has been bought and distributed, and these funds have been depleted? It is absolutely vital that the relief funding being sought be granted, and that the turnaround time for handing out food parcels needs to be expedited. For families who have already been under lockdown for 2.5 weeks, the need for assistance is now, and delays in distribution could literally have life or death implications. This is why these communities are going to have no choice but to start looking at the middle-class suburbs. I mean, there's no question about that. NGO worker Madge Blignort, who has been supplying food parcels to households, said hunger has always been a problem in the province. She said, "I don't think people realize the level of poverty that does exist in sections of the northern areas. Lockdowns have highlighted this problem. Those of us who work in the NGO sector, I work for Project Hope, we know about poverty. We have seen it, and we have always worked with it. We have been busy since the extension of the lockdown was announced to get more food parcels. We have handed out about 200 parcels so far. With the looting that took place yesterday, we had to vacate the building with all our stock and food parcels because we were being threatened. There were gangsters threatening us to come and loot the church. The 2 shops that were looted were down the road from where we were working." She said, "We were not making the address public from where we are working now. I have to make sure that we are safe. It is very tense at the moment." The other thing that the lockdown has done is to just bring people's frustrations levels to the surface. When you are hungry, you are angry. There is a sense of anger in the air, fear about the future, and a sense of hopelessness. It is a very real problem. We are doing what we can. Please to continue to give after lockdown. Poverty is a very real problem. Community leader Gary van Niekerk said the lockdown was very hard for people in the northern areas. He said, "Most of us need to go out and scarro or hustle for something to survive. This is the reality of being treated like we don't exist in the northern areas. That is why we are trying to get donations from those that can donate and to hand out at least one meal. The need is huge out there. We need to spread what we get, like that last bit of butter on your bread." Van Niekerk and a few helpers were handing out food at the Cyril Ramaphosa informal settlement on Wednesday. He said people were blaming a sudden hike in prices at the spaza shops for triggering the looting. People blamed the price hikes, the lack of food parcels, and no food at home. But the truth is that it is the criminal element. Apart from looting the shops, thieves also broke into several schools and took what they could. Now, talking about the schools, something like 185 schools in South Africa, that's like 6 a day, so no, more like 12 a day, 10 or 12 a day, have been looted, robbed blind during the lockdown. These are schools in South Africa since the lockdown. 185 schools, and that's known that they've actually been totally looted by people. This is a complete implosion of society in South Africa. It is terrible. Eastern Cape Education Department spokesperson Loiso Pulamani said thieves broke in and looted classrooms at De Heuvel Primary School, and criminals also stole electrical wires at Joe Slovo Primary School. The kitchen at the KK Nuwana School in KwaZulu-Natal was ransacked and 3 other schools were vandalized. Another community leader, Christian Martin, said people must understand that Port Elizabeth is a very unequal society. We have rich areas and poor areas. We were put into lockdown very fast. Nobody could prepare with food or hand sanitizers or masks or even gloves. What our poor people think of first is food. People are scared. They're stressing. They don't know what is going to happen next. People are hungry. Some of them started looting the spaza shops. We mustn't loot their shops. We're religious people. It doesn't matter which one, but all our religions warn that all of us were also foreigners once. I am very disappointed to see what happened. Even our schools have been looted. What worries me most is what is going to happen after the lockdown. The money for the food parcels will not last forever. Who will get and who will watch? I am asking that everybody will help. We are asking the parents to help. They must talk to the youngsters to stop the recklessness and the looting. The spaza shop owners helped us for many years. They are also parents and also want to look after their children. The saddest for me are the schools that have been attacked. Looting a school is a sick thing for a community to do to itself. To destroy your own youth, your own children, through destroying their future is the highest form of treason against your own community and society at large. He said when schools were vandalized during riots before 1994, it was almost excusable because we wanted to get rid of gutter education. We are damaged individuals, destroying ourselves. This is my saddest moment of all the 52 years I have spent in the northern areas. Now, this is just one report. It's happening all over South Africa right now. This is because, as I always say, the ANC government are clueless. They make all these promises, which are, to sum it up, is bullshit. That's the legacy of Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC government. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe.